competitor, I hate it because I'm like, we all want that rushing title.
What if I told you there was a running back in the NFL so physically overwhelming that defensive coordinators stopped drawing up one-on-one tackling assignments?
Derrick Henry, the scariest duo in the NFL.
Yeah, it's cheating. It's cheating. I mean, just honestly, from an offense perspective, it's cheating.
Not because it was bad technique, but because it was genuinely dangerous for their players. We're not talking about a bruiser who fell forward for an extra yard. We're talking about a 247-pound man who ran a 4.54 40, who broke arm tackles the way most people break chopsticks.
I do think he has Hall of Fame potential.
Wow.
I think he can be, one of the best to ever do it. I mean, look at his size and his speed, what he brings to the game.
Who had moments in NFL games where 4 defenders hit him simultaneously, and he kept going. Just kept going. His nickname wasn't given by a media team or a marketing department. His teammates called him King Henry, because that's what he was. On a football field, he was royalty. And nobody, not a safety, not a linebacker, not a corner, could take him down alone. But here's the thing about Derrick Henry that most people never think about. The freight train you saw every Sunday, that wasn't nature. That was built, brick by brick, rep by rep, in a place that didn't give anything away easy. And to understand how a kid from Yulee, Florida became the most physically dominant running back of his generation, we have to go back to the very beginning. So how did Derrick Henry develop into a back that the entire NFL structure, the rules, the schemes, the training programs, simply wasn't built to stop? And why, when every modern trend in football was pushing towards smaller, faster, pass-catching backs, did he double down on being the most old-school, straight-line, physically punishing runner in the game? Well, to answer those questions, we have to go back to Yulee, Florida in the mid-1990s, where a boy born on January 4th, 1994, was already being shaped by forces most kids never experience. We're going to watch a teenager destroy high school football so completely that college coaches were fighting over him, and then see a young man in Alabama rewrite the Heisman conversation entirely. And by the end of this video, we're going to watch him do something that almost never happens in the modern NFL. Go from franchise afterthought to the single most dominant offensive weapon in the entire league at 30 years old. Let's go back to Yulee. Yulee, Florida is a small town in Nassau County, tucked up near the Georgia border in the northeastern corner of the state. Population just over 15,000. It's the kind of town where everybody knows everybody, where Friday night football is the main event, and where the heat and humidity in August can make a 2-hour practice feel like 4. It is not a place that produces household names very often, but when it does, it tends to produce them a certain way: hard, determined, and without shortcuts. Derrick Henry was born on January 4th, 1994. His mother, Stacy Veal, raised him primarily in the care of his grandparents, Ikadra and Bob Perryman, after family circumstances meant his household shifted early on. His grandmother, Ikadra, was the constant, the anchor, and if you've ever heard Derrick Henry speak about his personal life, her name comes up almost immediately. In a 2016 interview, Henry said simply, "My grandma raised me. Everything I do for her." That's not a soundbite. That's the foundation. The Perrymans were not wealthy. Life in Yulee for Derrick as a child was modest, straightforward, and shaped by the tight-knit world of family and community that small southern towns offer. And it was in that environment that young Derrick first discovered something strange about himself. He was bigger than the other kids. Not just a little bigger, noticeably, significantly bigger. And he was fast. Not fast for a big kid, just fast. By the time he was 8 years old, playing youth football in Nassau County, coaches were already doing double takes on the sideline. He wasn't just running over kids, he was running through them, past them, around them. The combination of size and speed that would later make NFL defensive coordinators lose sleep was already there, in embryonic form, in a kid who hadn't yet started middle school. His grandmother saw it early, but more importantly, she saw that the talent could go 2 ways, toward something great or toward nothing at all, and she made sure Derrick understood that distinction. Football was the carrot, but discipline was the structure. He went to school. He stayed out of trouble. He worked. At Yulee High School, Derrick Henry became something the town had never seen. He played running back and linebacker. Yes, both sides of the ball. And he didn't just dominate the local competition, he obliterated it. By the time he was a junior, he had already rushed for over 2,000 yards in a single season. Coaches from programs like Florida, Florida State, Alabama, and Auburn were making the drive to Nassau County to watch a kid who looked like a college running back playing against high schoolers. His high school coach, Larry Williams, said something in a later interview that has stuck with the football world ever since. He said Derrick Henry had the rarest possible combination in an athlete: a body that was already grown and a motor that never, ever turned off. He was different, Williams said. Not just physically, the way he practiced, the way he prepared. He wasn't playing to impress anyone. He was playing because he genuinely loved it. That love, that intrinsic motivation, is going to matter a lot as this story unfolds. Because in the years ahead, there were going to be moments when the external rewards ran out, when the validation dried up, when people stopped believing. And when that happened, the thing that kept Derrick Henry going wasn't fame or money or draft boards. It was the same thing that kept him staying late in a hot Florida gym when he was 15 years old. He just loved the game. And then, in the fall of his senior year, something happened that started telling the entire country about it. It was his senior season at Yulee, the fall of 2012, and Derrick Henry was not interested in a normal final year of high school football. He was interested in something much larger. He rushed for 4,261 yards and 55 touchdowns his senior season. Let those numbers breathe for a second. 55 touchdowns in a high school season. The football was essentially borrowed from other teams just to give it back to them in the end zone. He was named Florida's Mr. Football. He was a consensus 5-star recruit, ranked as the top running back in the entire country and one of the top players nationally, regardless of position. But the moment that really announced him, the one where people outside of Florida sat up and started paying attention, came during the recruiting process itself. When Nick Saban personally called Derrick Henry, when Alabama, the reigning powerhouse of college football, told a teenager from Yulee, Florida, that they wanted him more than anyone else, the conversation in recruiting circles shifted. This wasn't just a good prospect, this was a generational prospect. Saban's pitch was straightforward, and Henry later recalled it with a quiet laugh in an interview. Coach Saban told me Alabama was going to give me a chance to be the best version of myself. That was enough. He committed to Alabama, and just like that, Yulee, Florida had sent one of its own to the biggest stage in college football. The expectations were immense. The pressure was real. A 5-star recruit at Alabama doesn't get time to settle in. You're immediately measured against the greats who came before you, and the program standard doesn't lower itself for anyone. Mark Ingram had just won Alabama a Heisman. TJ Yeldon was in the backfield. The depth chart was loaded, and for a while, a longer while than anyone expected, Derrick Henry had to wait. However, just as it seemed like the path forward was clearing, his journey was about to become more complicated than any recruiting ranking could have predicted. Here is a thing that people forget about Derrick Henry's college career. He wasn't a starter until his junior year. Think about that. The #1 running back recruit in the country. One of the most physically imposing players Alabama had seen come through the program in years. And for 2 full seasons, he was watching from the sideline, taking his reps, grinding, waiting. In his freshman year, 2013, Henry carried the ball just 36 times all season. 36. That's fewer carries than he scored touchdowns in his senior year of high school. TJ Yeldon and Kenyon Drake were ahead of him, and the Alabama system didn't give playing time based on recruiting rankings. You earned it. His sophomore year brought a much bigger role, 990 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns. But he still wasn't the featured centerpiece people expected from a player of his caliber. There were whispers, not in Tuscaloosa, but in the wider college football world. Questions about whether the size that made him so imposing at the high school level would translate at the next level. Whether the athleticism was real or inflated by inferior competition. Whether Derrick Henry had peaked in Nassau County. Imagine being 19, 20 years old, and hearing those conversations surround you. Imagine watching your 5-star ranking feel like it's collecting dust on a shelf. Imagine every practice knowing you're capable of more, knowing the ceiling is higher than anyone is letting you show, and having to sit on that, day after day, week after week. In a 2015 interview during his Heisman run, Henry spoke about those early years with a measured honesty that revealed exactly who he was. I never felt like I was being held back. I understood the process. Coach Saban says, trust the process for a reason. You don't go around it, you go through it. he went through it, because here's what was happening during those 2 quiet years that the stat sheet didn't show. Henry was working. Not the kind of working that earns headlines or social media clips, but the grinding, repetitive, unglamorous work of becoming. He was studying the Alabama system, understanding the blocking schemes, learning how to set up defenders with patience before detonating past them. He was in the weight room. He was on the practice field when he didn't have to be. He was becoming, slowly and quietly, the thing that would eventually terrify the entire NFL. But there was a moment, one specific Saturday, when the curtain got pulled back. In the 2014 Iron Bowl, Henry got extended carries for the first time in meaningful game action against elite competition. He ran hard, he ran through contact, and the coaching staff saw something they hadn't been able to measure in practice reps. He didn't just gain yards, he punished people. There's a difference between a running back who gains yards and one who makes the defense pay a physical price for every single attempt. Henry did the latter. Saban saw it. The offense saw it. And heading into his junior year, the question was no longer whether Derrick Henry was ready. The question was whether the rest of college football was ready for Derrick Henry. They were not. The 2015 college football season was, for Derrick Henry, an absolute masterpiece. He didn't just start his junior year. He took over the entire conversation of college football. By October, people weren't asking who the best running back in the country was anymore. They were asking how far ahead of everyone else he actually was. He carried the football an astonishing 395 times and still averaged 5.6 yards per carry. Defenses that spent an entire week preparing specifically for him, game planning, drilling, studying his tendencies, still couldn't stop him from eating them alive on Saturday afternoons. The game that made the national audience stop everything was the SEC Championship against Florida on December 5th, 2015. Florida fielded one of the best defenses in the country that year. Their front seven was physical, fast, and well coached. They had prepared extensively for Henry. It didn't matter. He rushed for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns, running through, around, and occasionally over some of the best college defenders in the country. His second touchdown run, a 50-yard burst where he simply outran an entire defense, had commentators struggling to find words. The performance felt almost absurd in real time. Then came the Heisman. On December 12, 2015, Derrick Henry stood in New York City and accepted the most prestigious individual award in college football. He was the first Alabama running back to win it since Mark Ingram in 2009, and he won it decisively. Alabama offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin, never a man known for understatement, called Henry one of the most physically dominant backs he'd ever coached. And then came the national championship. Against Clemson on January 11, 2016, Henry rushed for 158 yards and a touchdown in a 45-40 Alabama victory. He finished his junior season with 2,219 rushing yards, the third most in SEC history, and 28 touchdowns. He was a unanimous All-American. He was the 2015 Heisman Trophy winner. He was, by any measure, the best college football player in the country. He was also, at that point, already planning to leave. Henry declared for the 2016 NFL Draft. The projections had him as a first-round pick, most boards slotting him somewhere in the late first or early second round. NFL scouts loved the size, loved the speed, but raised questions. Questions that will sound very familiar to anyone who's watched Derrick Henry's career, about whether he could catch passes out of the backfield, whether he was a 3-down back in the modern NFL, and whether his style of running would hold up against NFL defenders. The Tennessee Titans selected Derrick Henry with the 45th overall pick in the second round of the 2016 NFL Draft. His reaction, in a clip that has aged extremely well, was calm, almost eerily calm. He said, "I know what I can do. Now I just have to go show them." His first 2 NFL seasons looked, on the surface, a lot like his first 2 college seasons. Limited carries, sharing the backfield, this time with DeMarco Murray, and flashes of brilliance squeezed into limited opportunities. He rushed for 490 yards his rookie year, then 744 yards in 2017 as he and Murray split duties. The Titans were careful with him, methodical, and there was a growing sense in Nashville that something enormous was being kept just slightly in check. Then DeMarco Murray was released before the 2018 season, and suddenly the backfield belonged to Henry. In 2018, Derrick Henry took over the starting role, and over the second half of the season, he did things that changed how the NFL thought about running the football. He rushed for 238 yards against Jacksonville in December. 238 yards in a single game. He finished the year with 1,059 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns, earned his first Pro Bowl selection, and gave the Titans exactly what they had hoped and maybe feared they had drafted 2 years earlier. Titans coaches and teammates openly admitted afterward that Henry looked impossible to tackle that day in Jacksonville. And yet, as electric as 2018 was, it was only a preview. What was coming in 2019 and 2020 would rewrite NFL history. Before we get to the peak, and we will get there, we need to talk about what almost kept Derrick Henry from reaching it. The 2019 season was the best statistical year of Henry's career to that point. He won the NFL rushing title with 1,540 yards. He dragged the Tennessee Titans, almost single-handedly, into the playoffs. And in the postseason, he did something so extraordinary that it entered the permanent highlight reel of NFL history. He rushed for 182 yards and a touchdown against the New England Patriots in Foxborough, including a 35-yard touchdown run where he ran over and through literally everyone who tried to stop him, including, memorably, a defensive back who bounced off his thigh like a rubber ball. The Titans kept rolling. They upset the Baltimore Ravens the following week, and suddenly, a franchise that nobody had taken seriously was in the AFC Championship game. They lost to Kansas City, but Henry's legend had been rewritten over 3 playoff weeks. Then came 2020. Henry won his second consecutive rushing title, 2,027 yards, one of the few players in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards in a single season, and one of the greatest rushing seasons the league had ever seen. He was the unquestioned best player at his position in football, and the Titans rewarded him with a 4-year, $50 million contract extension. And then, in the 6th game of the 2021 season, running the football against the Indianapolis Colts on October 31st, Derrick Henry planted his foot to cut up field, felt something wrong in his right foot, and limped to the sideline. He had suffered a Jones fracture, a break in the 5th metatarsal of his right foot, the kind of injury that doesn't just hurt, it ends seasons. In one play, the most unstoppable force in the NFL was reduced to a man on crutches, watching from the sideline as his team tried to survive without him. The Titans went 8-2 in the regular season without Henry and won the AFC South, which at first looked like a silver lining. But there is no silver lining to watching your identity stripped away. Henry, who had defined himself through the physical act of running football, through the grind, the contact, the sustained dominance, was suddenly irrelevant to his own team's success in real time. His role in games was gone. His ability to practice was gone. Everything he was built to do was, temporarily, taken from him. He spoke about that period carefully, as he typically does, in an interview early in his recovery. It was hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I had to learn a different kind of patience, not waiting for my turn on the depth chart, waiting for my body. That's a different kind of hard. The Titans were eliminated in the divisional round that January. Henry was activated, but clearly not himself. Limited carries, limited burst. The foot was healing, but the explosion that had made him the rushing title winner 2 years running wasn't fully back. And as the Titans struggled through the following seasons, questions about Henry's future in Tennessee started growing louder. He was approaching 30 years old, a number that NFL front offices historically treat like a warning sign for running backs, and the conversation around him slowly shifted from dominance to durability. He was 28 years old. He just had foot surgery. The modern NFL had already been moving away from power backs toward committee approaches and receiving backs for years. Critics who had waited patiently for the right moment to write the decline narrative found their keyboards warm and ready. But here's the thing about Derrick Henry that his entire career has proven, again and again. He doesn't read the narratives. He just shows up. The turning point didn't happen on a football field. It happened in the offseason, in a conversation that began circulating through NFL circles in early 2024. Derrick Henry was leaving Tennessee. After 8 seasons with the Titans, the only NFL home he'd ever known, Henry became a free agent. The Titans declined to re-sign him. And in that moment, a story that seemed like it might quietly close in Nashville was handed a new chapter in a completely unexpected place. The Baltimore Ravens came calling, and Lamar Jackson wanted Derrick Henry. Think about that pairing for a second. The most physically dominant runner in the NFL, the most dynamic quarterback on the planet, running behind one of the best offensive lines in football, in an offense specifically designed to make every defender on the field wrong simultaneously. The Ravens signed Henry to a 2-year deal in March of 2024, and the reaction across the football world ranged from excited to terrified, depending on which side of the ball you coached. Henry was 30 years old when the 2024 season started. The foot was 2.5 years in the rearview mirror. He had spent the 2022 and 2023 seasons with Tennessee. Productive, yes, still elite at moments, but not the hurricane force that had made him legendary in 2019 and 2020. People were willing to believe the Ravens would get a capable veteran back, maybe 1,200 yards, a quality complementary piece to Lamar's brilliance. What they got was something different entirely. Derrick Henry ran for 1,921 yards in the 2024 regular season. He scored 16 rushing touchdowns. He led the NFL in rushing. At 30 years old, in his 9th NFL season, after foot surgery, after Tennessee chose not to bring him back, he put together the best statistical season of his entire career. The game that crystallized what was happening, the one that made people throw their remotes or leap off their couches, depending on allegiance, came in October against the Washington Commanders. Henry carried the ball 27 times for 199 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the fourth quarter, with the game tight and the defense knowing exactly what was coming, he broke 3 tackles on a single run, bounced off a safety who had a clean angle, and walked into the end zone. Lamar Jackson, standing on the sideline, watched with the expression of a man who still couldn't quite believe what he was witnessing, despite having practiced alongside it all week. "He's the best running back I've ever seen," Jackson said simply after the game. "I don't have another way to say it." The NFL, specifically the analyst class that had written the eulogy for power running, had some explaining to do. But here's the part of the 2024 comeback that connects all the way back to that hook, back to the idea that Derrick Henry physically couldn't be tackled one-on-one. In Baltimore, with an offensive line that created even better running lanes, the one-on-one problem for defenses became completely unsolvable. Safeties who tried to fill the hole alone were simply run through. Cornerbacks who over-pursued were juked off their feet. Linebackers who hit him square in the chest reported the experience to teammates with a kind of shell-shocked tone that became its own running joke in NFL locker rooms. Defensive coordinators around the league routinely described Henry as a player defenses had to survive, not completely stop. That is an extraordinary thing to say about a running back. The Ravens won the AFC North with the best record in the conference. Henry's yards from scrimmage total was the highest of his career. He was named a first-team All-Pro. And in the locker room after the regular season ended, when a reporter asked Henry what this year meant, after the injury, after leaving Tennessee, after all the doubters, he allowed himself one quiet moment of satisfaction. "I told everybody I wasn't done," he said. "I meant it." He meant it. Derrick Henry is one of the most singular running backs the NFL has ever produced. Not just because of the numbers, though the numbers are extraordinary, but because of what he represented at a moment when the position he played was supposedly dying. Over a career spanning from 2016 to the present, Henry has accumulated well over 10,000 rushing yards. He has won 2 NFL rushing titles. He has been named to multiple Pro Bowls and earned All-Pro honors. He is one of the few players in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards in a single season. And he did it running a style of football that every smart person in the analytics community spent the 2000s explaining was obsolete. Downhill, physical, one cut, take the hit and keep going running.
What changed in the NFL because of Derrick Henry?
More than people acknowledge. Teams began reconsidering the dismissal of power backs. The conversation around offensive line construction shifted, particularly how teams thought about blocking for downhill runners. Young running backs who were told to develop a receiving game and learn to work in space watched Henry's career and understood that there was still a path, a demanding, physically punishing path, built on doing one thing at a historically elite level. His former Titans teammate, wide receiver A.J. Brown, who watched him from close range during the peak years, said it as well as anyone. Derrick doesn't run to avoid contact. He He runs to make contact. That sounds like a small thing. It changes everything. And at the center of all of it, the Heisman, the rushing titles, the comeback with Baltimore, the 55 touchdowns at Yulee High, the weight room sessions nobody filmed, was a kid from Nassau County whose grandmother raised him right and whose grandfather told him that work was the only currency that never lost its value. Henry has said in late career interviews, with characteristic simplicity, what mattered most. I run for the people who believed in me. My grandma, my family. That's it. The freight train wasn't built in an NFL facility. It was built in Yulee, Florida, by a family that didn't have everything, but gave everything they had. By the way, let me know what you think in the comments below. Is Derrick Henry the most physically dominant running back in NFL history? Not the best overall, not the most complete, not the greatest statistical accumulator, the most physically dominant. Because that argument is more interesting than people give it credit for, and I'd genuinely love to hear where you land. Drop it below. If you made it to the end of this one, thank you. These stories are worth telling. King Henry is worth knowing. And there's a lot more where this came from.